Okay, here we are again. We are back. Welcome, everybody. This is the We Quit Booze Brothers, which is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Mark. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, we are back again. We had a bit of a break, actually. I think it's been 2 weeks. So apologies for anyone who was, anticipating a video. I'm pretty sure our legions of fans were waiting for us to upload the latest installment of Home of the Blues Brothers. But we had some time out. Mark was away, and I had our mother was over actually. So we were busy on our side too. But it's good to be back, and I've got a topic which kind of sort of over the last few weeks has been impacting me. So I thought I wanted to share this one, but
Okay.
I'll let you introduce it,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think everybody was, the whole world is waiting for the next series of Squid Game and the next drop of the We Quit Booze Brothers podcast. They were the two big
Yeah, that's
things
it.
everybody was waiting for. So cool. Well, look, I'm going to try and let Matt do most of the talking, which will be an absolute miracle, I'm sure, for anybody that listens to this over any period of time. But it is a really interesting topic, and I'm interested to hear what Matt has to say about it. I've done a bit of thinking about it myself, and it's really just talking about that topic of the stigma, which still appears to be attached to anybody who has misused alcohol in any way, shape, or form. And it is a really interesting one because when you do quit, you'll have to tell people that you don't drink. And quite often, when you tell them that, the first question they will ask is, why don't you drink anymore? And
Yeah,
I've found that as time has gone by, I've just found that more and more easy to answer. I won't go into it just yet because I'll let you do a bit of your talking about, but it sort of challenges you. And Matt and I had a sort of back and forth. We had a sort of WhatsApp conversation about this episode today, and he was saying, I still find myself kind of dancing around the truth. And your kids are getting a bit older now; they'll start to ask questions. I'm guessing they might even, maybe read the book. And how should we feel about all of this? And that's really the topic. So, look, I'll leave it there, Matt, because like I
yeah.
said, I know you've got quite a bit to say about it, and we'll sort of dig into it. We'll try and unpack it and see where we land.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, the intro was perfect, and that's exactly what I've had. Three little experiences, not experiences in in the term a major thing, but just three things that occurred that made me think of this topic, and the fact that this whole stigma around alcoholism, even in my case, drugs and drug taking, etc., how it really is just so difficult to shift. The reason being is that you never know who's going to talk to you about it, or who's going to ask you, or how where the conversation's going to go, and how much truth you want to let out. And that was really a situation. I had a Sunday night. We went out for dinner with some friends, and this guy doesn't drink anymore, and he had some problems with alcohol, but my kids were there. And so
Mm,
he was saying, "Oh, what was it that made you sort of stop?" And I was kind of, it wasn't coming out right. I wasn't, really. I was trying to sort of say, "Oh, well, I just kind of had enough. Wanted to see what life was like," but it wasn't. I wasn't doing him justice, if you know what I mean. I wasn't being truthful, and it frustrated me. And then my son piped up, and he was said, "Oh, well, what about the book? Didn't you do drugs? What type of drugs were you doing?" And I sat there thinking, this is not going. Can we just have dinner?"
yeah.
And I kind of felt that, I felt ashamed and unsure. And then afterwards, I kind of thought about it and thought, well, how the hell are we going to change this perception on alcohol and obviously drugs in my case, if we can't talk about it, if we can't talk about that change? And then a third thing happened as well, which kind of like rocked me a tiny bit, which was, we were talking about this before the podcast. My son is 15. I'm not going to use the word I said with my brother, but he's difficult right now. He's being a pain. and it's causing a bit of friction in the household. And my wife is it's driving her insane. And as you do as parents, you look forward. You talk about where they're going to go and what's going to happen, and then my wife made a comment. She said, "Oh, well, obviously he might read that book, and it was said in a way of like, you know, well, if he goes down that road, you sort of got yourself to blame." And then she realized, and she was like, but that's, I think it's probably not our problem at all. And then but it kind of rocked me, and I was like, God, is this really bad news? And then I got into that phase of kind of worrying about it and thinking, does this mean, I'm basically going to be portrayed as a bit of a failure, and that real worry as well that
Mm.
my kids may take my issues, my addiction, if you like, and use it as a way to make it okay for them to do it. That's the biggest worry, isn't it? And that they may use it against me. They may in time go, well, if maybe we're having a discussion or a dispute or whatever it might be, they might say, well, who are you to say this? You were just an addict or whatever it might be. And I think I've got a second part to this, so I'm probably going to hand back to you just for a couple of minutes, and then I'll finish it off.
It's really, oh mate, I mean, Christ, what an interesting conversation. It's interesting, I think, how we are so much better at giving other people advice than we are at giving ourselves advice. And just listening to you then, I found myself experiencing a whole mixture of emotions. The first one, sort of main one, I think, is how honest you're being. And I think that is so valuable. I feel like the world needs better male role models. And part of that includes being vulnerable, discussing areas where we don't feel, there's a poor male role model is somebody who portrays themselves as, you know, I'm on, nothing can knock me off this white charger. I'm on my horse with my sword held high, and nothing can knock me off that horse. The fact is, everybody gets knocked off the horse in one way, shape, or form. And I just feel like it's really an amazing thing. It's admirable. I feel that that's what this podcast is all about. And I think if we can't be honest, and if you can't be honest, then we might as well just pack up. We might as well just stop, because it won't be helpful to people. There are too many sobriety outlets where they just talk about shitting rainbows and dollar bills and riding unicorns, when there is a gritty side to all of this.
Yeah.
The other thing I felt is empathy. And then I started to think about the sort of reality of, of all of this. And I think that, going back to my point earlier about how we're better at giving other people advice than we are ourselves, I can totally understand how you would feel. I empathize with that. I've done it myself. But I tend to find that I respect people like you so much more than I do those that have just sort of, I know people in my life who are so straight down the line. They've never gone left or right. They're so, everything's so predictable, and not always, but there's a little whiff of sort of sanctimonious. And the 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 thing is that for them, it's never been an effort. And I think that I'm jumping around a little bit here, so bear with me. I will bring this back on track. But to my mind, part of what we've been through, I think that drinking a lot, taking drugs is part of life's journey. I think that those who are a bit more expansive, more creative. I mean, just look at the creativity, the creative types who get involved in drugs. I think it shows nuance. I think it shows color. I think it, in the end, to go on our journey and to sort of arrive at the point we've arrived at. I don't think there's a better, like I say, I go back to, I know this isn't just for men at all. This is for men, but in case you haven't noticed, Matt and I are two dudes. So, there's no better male role model than than that. And the other thing I would just say to you, mate, as well, is that I've got some friends, close friends, and they brought, I won't mention them, but they brought, sorry, I won't mention them by name. They brought their kids up, um, and I remember they didn't drink in front of them. They never smoked in front of them. They were sort of unbelievably disciplined in the way that they portrayed themselves to their kids, and it hasn't worked.
Mm.
One of them is pretty much
I think.
completely off the rails. And I think that you are in a better position to help guide your kids because you know what you're talking about. You've been there, you understand. If you'd never done it, you would get hit by, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand. You don't know what this is, and you do know it. So that was a bit of a riff, and it was a bit of a mishmash, but it is fascinating, and I'm really glad you brought it up, and I'm really glad you were prepared to be as honest about it as you are, because I think that until we start having these conversations, like I said in one of the podcasts before, if you took shame and put it in a petri dish in a science laboratory and you wanted it to grow, the things that make it grow are secrecy. I can't remember what the other one, but not talking about it. That's what will make it grow. The way to kill it is communication, sharing it, discussing it. That's what makes it shrink. So, yeah, a lot to unpack, and yeah, absolutely fascinating. But let me hand back to you, and I'll pick up my thread again after that.
Thanks. Yeah, and this is, why I kind of wanted to bring this topic to the table because I kind of felt it was raw, it was real, and we, for everyone listening out there, we do go through what you're going through. It sometimes rears its ugly head, and we live this journey with you, and that's what we, that's why we started this. That's why we do it. It's super amateur. I mean, Christ, look at the backdrop. I'm just sat in my bedroom, and we just do this because we want to get the message out to whoever will listen and wants to listen. But I did sit down and I did think, why is this? Why is it that I'm feeling this way? And I started thinking about some other examples. Like, we never hold any prejudice against someone who smokes and then stops smoking. You just don't, do you? You go, well done, it's brilliant, best thing you ever did. And also, I was thinking as well, like, and this might be wrong, and I'm entering into territory that I'm not super comfortable with, but I did think that maybe it's kind of the same. It's like if you said you were addicted to prescription medicine, again, is it less than alcohol, cocaine, And then I thought again, and I was like, no, God, I actually going to read what I wrote. I actually wrote, no, read my book, read the list, fuck you. And I'll tell you why I wrote that is because, you know, um, when I go back to it, what you touched on is absolutely true, and it's where I wanted to finish. Is I actually write a list of names in my book, and it says here is a list of names. It's Carrie Fisher, Daniel Radcliffe, Buzz Aldrin, Anthony Hopkins, Stephen King, Robin Williams, Jamie Lee Curtis, Matthew Carrison, Kelly Osbourne, Robert Downey Jr., Bradley Cooper, Ben Affleck, Ewan McGregor, and finally Brad Pitt. Now, all those people, mega successful. We
Mm.
idolize a lot of those people.
Mm.
I put myself in there. Why did I put myself on the list? Because I know damn well that I've been through many of the emotions, many of the things. Addiction doesn't care. It doesn't care about
Mm.
race, color, creed, money, whatever. If you have problems, it's the same problems that everyone's having,
Mm.
and that stigma needs to die. And that's kind of what I felt. So, if anyone is feeling how I felt the other day, um, it is normal, and I do question things at times, but then I try and bring it back and go, no, Christ, you're a normal person who had the same issues as, someone who's idolized, and they're happy to talk about it and they talk about it. So you've got to talk about it too. And otherwise, this world isn't going to change.
Well,
I'm
I
trying to
think,
change the world on my own, but, every little helps.
yeah, I mean, I think, yes, normal person, but somebody that's done something extraordinary. And, I think that the, it's all about the journey, isn't it? And at the end of the day, alcohol is a really, really addictive substance. It's a highly, highly addictive substance. Society promotes and endorses it in a way that puts people at enormous risk. And our brains react to the alcohol differently. It's a scientific. In fact, just Google it. Get Chat GPT and ask why do some people have issues with misuse of alcohol and others don't. And it's got nothing to do with willpower. It's got nothing to do with willpower. It's
No,
got nothing to do with character. It's just genetics, it's circumstance, you know. And because it's so addictive, you form these neuro dependencies without even realizing it. So I think if you want my answer to, well, how do we fix the stigma, you do what we're doing. You talk about it, you open it up, you talk about it, you get it out in the open. And it really helps. It helps me and you, and hopefully it helps people
yeah,
listening to this. So there's more, as always with these, there's more to be said on this. And of course, you do these podcasts and you think, I've got about 50 million other things that I want to think about and I want to talk about. So, that's why it's just an endless, topic. But I just think you should feel really proud. I mean, of the man that you are now. I think that I'm not sure either one of us would be the people we are. I think we are able to recognize the sort of fortune in the everyday things because of those issues. I think maybe without those
yeah,
issues, you wouldn't have that empathy. And yeah, it's but it's a fascinating topic, that's for sure.
yeah. No, I mean, I think we could go on. We could, talk almost indefinitely about it, but I
Mm.
just wanted to get it out there. Again, and even having this conversation is helpful to me, and it's helpful, hopefully, to everyone. And I'd love to have your comments on it, folks. Leave us your comments. You always do, and we appreciate them, and they're super useful. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that'd be really interesting to hear from as many of you as possible. Have you experienced this? What do you think about it? What are your thoughts? We can gather up all of that feedback that we get and, maybe have another conversation just to sort of round it out. But yeah, and don't worry about the teenager thing, mate, because they will drive you absolutely fucking mad. You'll argue, you and your wife will argue, because not because you're arguing, but because the
they're
teenager
driving me
the
insane. Yeah, yeah,
teenagers and you start to worry and but honestly I think one of the things with children that I've learned is that they are born with their own personalities, their own mindset, and we as parents think that we have some sort of divine control over how they're going to think, how they're going to operate. We don't. All you can do is be two parents and bring them up.
yeah.
They'll always
Support as best you can. And yeah, go with it.
Yeah, they'll always find ways to fuck with you, though. Trust me.
Okay.
That's for sure. Anyway, okay. Well, look, we'll leave it there. That's a brilliant discussion. And yeah, like I said, lots more to get stuck into on that one, I think. So we'll leave it there for now. As always, thanks so much for watching and listening. This was a bit unrehearsed, this one. You could probably tell with sort of, I'm certainly sitting here thinking about a million things going through my mind as I'm listening to Matt. But we'll circle back on it. And as always, like I always say, never quit quitting. Until the next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.
Goodbye,
Cheers.
bro.
Bye for now.